Going live in 3, 2, 1, cue.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You are tuning in at IIUM TV live with political insights, 40 minutes of political knowledge. My name is Alia Daniel, and co-hosting with me tonight is Political Insights brand new face.
Hey guys, I'm Aisha Azarisman, and it is such a pleasure to be hosting tonight's episode alongside this wonderful person to my left. Be sure to stick with us. More for more interesting content. And while you're at it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on on all of IIUM TV's social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, and our latest social media account, LinkedIn. So, Alia, how has the week been for you?
Honestly, it's been a really busy week for me. There were just so many submissions due this week. But you know what else is busy? Of course, the many media platforms that, with everything going on right now, that is busy as well. So yeah.
Exactly. There has definitely been a lot of news going around, which brings me to today's topic, none other than today's conversation starter, the Melaka state election.
With us here today, we have Mr. Seng, Keat, and Dr. Marzuki to discuss with us on this issue. So our first speaker will be Mr. Seng Keat, Senior Manager of the Merdeka Center of Opinion and Research, which is the first private polling firm in Malaysia. And before being involved with Merdeka Center, he was involved in various projects with donor agencies and Malaysia government agencies. So of course, with that, he knows a lot about market research and exposure to the Asia Pacific market. So it's an honor to have you here with us today. How are you, Mr. Tan?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm good.
Mr. Tan, are you with us?
Yep. Yeah. Good evening. Yep.
Okay, so welcome to Mr. Tan. Our second speaker will be Datuk Dr. Ahmad Marzuki bin Omar. Dr. Marzuki holds a degree in law from IIUM, a master's in political science from UKM, and also a PhD in political science from the Australian National University. Dr. Marzuki started his career as a lecturer in IIUM since the year 1999 to this present day. So, welcome, Dr. Marzuki, for tonight's episode. How are you feeling?
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm good. I wish all of you are in good health
Doctor, can you
and
hear us?
good as well. Right. Yeah, it has been a pleasure for me to be here today or tonight to share some thought on the just concluded Melaka state election. I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So to our
Yeah.
viewers, if you have any curiosities, you can post it in the chat box, and we will address it during the Q&A session at a later time. So without further ado, let us start with our first question, which is for Mr. Tan. So Mr. Tan, can you briefly share the chronology and the underlying goals of the Malacca state election that was held recently?
Well, we all know that recently there's a so-called the state elections in Malacca happens in last Saturday, the previous Saturday, and we all know that the reason behind all these things is because there's a four adun from the ruling coalition who are not satisfied with the chief minister, and they want to create from a coalition and want to form another government with the opposition then. But all these things happen because of these four adun who withdraw support to the chief minister of the state itself. But before this, we also need to trace back the historical event where in year 2000, 2020, they also changed the government from the so-called Pakatan government to the and also UMNO governments in year 2000 March. So that time also like two PPP Adun quit from the coalition and join forth with UMNO, Barisan Nasional. At the same time, together with one ex the PKI and one ex DAP Hadun. So there's a change of government very frequent in the last 2 years. So that's why there's a by then maybe to resolve all these things together, it's better to dissolve the state's assembly so that they call a fresh election so that people decide the mandates for the state government. But also because the it's last year until now we are still under this pandemic, so there's why a lot of noise, a lot of is it supposed to have this election, but nonetheless all these have been passed, all this happened. So that's why we dissolve the state assembly, then we have this state election, then we also have the results come out last week, and a lot of people discuss about the reason why there's such result. I think this one we can have another long discussion about our political system, our electoral system, and also how the people voting. Yeah, thank you.
So understand that the pandemic has made the Malacca state election as a more popular issue, especially with how like how it is how it would be able to impact the people of Malaysia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tan. So the second question goes to you, Dr. Marzuki. Okay, so some parties have sent a number of new faces as representatives to contest in the Malacca state election. How does this affect the public's confidence?
Yeah, if we can notice that political parties who take part in the Melaka state election fielded candidates, many of whom are very young, not only young but also credible, qualified, and many of them also professionals. You have doctors, engineers, lawyers, as candidates across parties in that election. So to me, this is a reflection of how political parties, responded to public uh, wish or public perception about winnable candidates. What the public wants actually, who they want to be their representative. So if you can see that in any election, particularly in the recent elections in Malaysia, the contest for votes has been very competitive. So parties need to really improve their, performance, their policies, their stance on many issues, and this include fielding good candidates. Parties are very concerned about what they call as winnable candidates. So when they field a candidate in election, so they want the candidate to win in the election. So one of the criteria that is so important that could determine how the result be is the qualification of the candidate, as well as the age of the candidates. Normally, parties will go for, in the past, old timer they call it. They go for warlords, to be fielded in the election. Because these personalities at the local level sometimes they hold or they have a very strong grip on the party machineries. But I think the thinking has been slightly changed while the party still feel the old timer or the party strongman as candidates in election. But there are also rooms, if you can see in the Melaka state election, for young candidates to be fielded as candidates in the election. So this is to me a reflection of how political parties themselves, responded to the public sentiment, and I think by doing that, it somehow put faith, or bring some good vibes, into politics among the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So we can see that bringing in new faces as representatives helps bring a new perspective, new fresh ideas into the government itself. So before we proceed, we will be having a 2-minute break. Be sure to stick with us to know more about the Melaka state election.
Video ke? So, wawasan what inside behind the scene. Ada is PR, the manager, host yang terbesar. Saya nak main game Naruto. Suruh dia masuk. Dah boleh. Busy. Tak. Sebab aku tak biasa dengan tak ni. Aku tak cakap apa tapi kita tanya audience jawab.
Get apa-apa Umi nak from you juga ke, will use private search
Sudah di masa tak panik.
Going live in 3, 2, 1, cue.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and welcome to Political Insights, 40 minutes of political knowledge. I am Ilya Marsha, your host for tonight, and thank you for tuning in for our second episode. This is very renowned political student friend. So let us welcome our first politics.
And the what we call the demand from the outside, then it will be problem. They come up with any statement. But the issue, what I'm trying to say is that the issue, I want to share with you what has been done. The culture of intellectualism among the students, and also to empower the student standard in the campus.
So, as we are currently in the second half of the semester, I hope that everyone is doing great and fine and still riding their momentum to finish through the semester.
Welcome back to Political Insights. We are currently discussing on the Melaka state election with Mr. Tan Seng Keat and also Dr. Marzuki. So now we shall proceed with our discussion with our next question. So, a total amount of 120,000 ringgit worth of compounds was being issued throughout the Melaka state election. So how does this reflect the obedience of the public towards following the SOP throughout the campaigning and voting period? What is your take on this, Mr. Tan?
Okay, for this state, the Melaka elections is under this under this pandemic, right? And KKM come out with very strict kind of restrictions on how the campaign can be conducted. But we all know that election is kind of very aggressive or very active kind of event, so that you only can outreach to your voters or potential supporter, so that to ready them kind of vote for you. Because of this very strict SOP, technically it's not, you can't campaign at all. But we all know that all the contestant party try to organize something. So at the same time, the enforcement agency, KKM, and also our police, and try to and enforce some of these things. So that's why we have this kind of 120,000 fines for all the participant contested party and the candidate. But we all know that we kind of balance between the pandemic's control and also the election campaign, so that without good information, without the good campaign, the voter probably cannot make a good choice or make a good informed decision. So this kind of very a dilemma. But we also notice from the observation and some of our survey, actually this time around the Melaka election actually is quite kind of cold, because a lot of people don't pay attention to the election. We just came out from all this lockdown, right? So a lot of people pay attention to all these kind of daily activity, economics, earning a living kind of things. So people didn't pay a lot of attention to the election campaign. So that's why we have you say if people not interested, that's why that's why the campaign is quite cold. But at the same time, we also have this 120,000 compound for all these offences. But if let's say the KKM more relaxed, I think, or more strict, then we will probably have a very different outcome for these elections also. So you ask me whether people compliant. I say most of the people are compliant on the SOP. But we all know that if let's say you want to organize elections, well, definitely it's kind of, you will have to meet with your voters, your supporter, and or your mercenary. Definitely you will oversteps or the so-called SOP. So that's why it kind of dilemma for the political party and also the candidates and also the voters. So I would think that most of the people will comply, but sometimes we all know that people don't comply, but I think there's a minority. And also we now, after 1 week after the election, we are still observing the KKM figures. Is there any spikes to the Melaka's cases? So far, we see seems that quite stable. So touch wood. So we hope that nothing bad will happen after come from this Melaka election. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. So I understand that there needs to be teamwork from all parties and authorities to ensure that a good campaign can be produced.
So the overall voter turnout for the 15th Melaka state election recorded by the Election Commission was 65.85%, which is far lower than the 70% target initially predicted by the Election Commission. What is your opinion on this, Dr. Marzuki?
Like what Seng said just now, first I think very restrictive campaign. If you were in Melaka during the campaign period, other than the flags, you can't really think that the state is in the midst of an election, because the campaign activities are very restricted. Then I would say that there is no mood. Election mood was not there. Yeah? Normally, campaign activities contributed to, the feeling of excitement among the voters, and that will probably lead them to come out and vote on the polling day. But in Melaka, the campaign, I must say, that's very, very, very limited. I was there during the 2 weeks, the campaign period. Then could see that the SOPs are very strict. You can hold ceramah, even house to house visit also not allowed, and so many other things that political parties normally organize during a normal election couldn't be done in the Melaka state election. So I think that is one factor probably that contributed to the low voter turnout. Secondly, of course, pandemic. We heard stories like children, did not encourage or discourage parents from going out to vote because they are worried that their parents, especially the older generation, that will be infected with the virus. And will put their life in jeopardy. So this is also probably one of the reasons. And thirdly, I think fatigue, political fatigue. There are a lot of political drama has been going on in the country since the past 1 year or so, beginning from the change of the federal government in March 2020, and also the Sabah state election after that, and now another election. So I think that the political fatigue probably was there, and this led to perhaps a feeling of indifference. People becoming so indifferent towards politics, and it did not really excite them to come out and vote. So you can see the voter turnout was quite low compared to the previous general election. and perhaps what do you call this other state election or by-election as well. So that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So as we can see, because we are in the pandemic itself and we are approaching just starting to living our normal lives again. So there are so many factors that contributed to people not going out to vote, resulting to the low percentage.
Mr. Tan, I would like to know, do you think that the culture of party hopping has led the Malacca's people's decision on not going out to vote? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about this, whether the culture of party hopping led to the Melaka voters' decision not to come out to vote. We haven't touched this question yet. Haven't done any survey on this. Probably Sankyat, probably if you have anything on this, then you can help us, or any findings on whether this is also a factor that contributed to, let's say, the political fatigue. It could be one of the reason, but I cannot say for sure unless we have a proof of this as one of the main factors, why people feel not interested to come out to vote. At least the 35% of those who didn't come out to vote. Of course, we can't have 100% turnout. No, in our election history, we never reach 100% turnout. But normally it's about 80% or more. But this one is quite low, 65.85%. I can't say for sure whether that is one of the main reasons, unless you have any data to support that.
So I understand that further research would be needed in order to identify the factors leading to why people or less people are choosing not to vote or are hesitating when it comes to their political stand. Would you like to ask the next question, Aisha?
All right, so the next question is for Mr. Tan. Okay, so Mr. Tan, does the number of voter turnout might reflect the future of Malaysia's 15th general election?
For this, normally we observe the state elections. If let's say it's not happen together with the general election, the turnouts normally are lower. So in the past, we have Sabah and Sarawak state election, which is different from the general election. So we always notice that the state elections turn out about 10 to 15% lower than the general elections. So this Melaka election, I wouldn't say will reflect the future general election if it even happen in the next 6 months or next year. I don't think that will be the same because state election is different from is detached from the general election. So a lot more people think that this is just a state election, state government. Okay, so they are more interested in the federal election in the general election. So they didn't go back and vote. And also, this Melaka election is very unique in the case that will be the first election after we come through like 3 or 4 lockdown. So a lot of people are still kind of fearful about all these potential risks from the COVID and also the health reason. So and people also like hardship, so hit by all this lockdown. So people are more focused on earning a living rather than pay attention to politics. So I would say the turnout will be not the same if let's say general election is called. So general election is called will be the nationwide campaign. I hope we will have campaign, no more this very kind of restricted SOP. Then I think the turnout will be higher. But I also need to cautious a point that in next year, OD 18 will be come into, and also the automated voter registration will come in place. This means that suddenly you have 7-8 more millions voters out there that will be in the electoral roll. In the past, only people who interested in politics, they registered as voters. So we got 80%, 85% turnout. But this time around, people who are not interested in politics, they didn't register all this while. They are in the electoral roll now. Then also same thing, we lower down the voting age 21 to 18. Means the young people who are not interested in politics, they are not allowed to register to vote.
Mr. Tan, proceed. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tan. As we know that since everybody is too busy making a living and focusing on trying to get more votes into the general election instead of state election, that contributed as to the percentage being very low, and we cannot say that it is going to affect the voter turnout for the general election.
So we are now going to be taking a short break to keep you refreshed. So stay tuned with political insights and our discussion on the Melaka state election.
Welcome back to Political Insights. We are right now discussing on the Melaka state election with Mr. Tan Seng Keat and Dr. Marzuki. Alia, would you like to take it from here?
So we have a question, and our next question is for Dr. Marzuki. So do you think that the Melaka state election is an indicator for which party will dominate the ruling government for the Malaysia's 15th general election?
Yeah, I think it's a bit too early to guess which party will dominate in the next general election, because as we know that Melaka is a state election. Melaka has a specific electoral demography and history on voting trend. I must say that probably if the election is held in some other states, probably the outcome will be quite different because of the difference in the electoral demography and voting trend. So it is still too early, to say that it will reflect, which party will dominate. But certain thing for probably more possible, to happen in the next general election is probably the multi-corner the multi-cornered fight in the election or multi-cornered contest involving a number of national coalitions. As we can see in Melaka, there are 3 national coalitions, taking part in election: BN, PN, PH, and probably the next general election there will be other coalitions. National coalition will take part, other than political parties, individual political parties, as well as independent candidates. So I think the dynamics will be different. That one thing. Secondly, as Seng also mentioned just now, there will be about 6 million new voters that will be eligible to vote in the next general election if it is done next year. So these new voters, huge in number, in some parliamentary areas, it involved an increment of about 15,000, 20,000 new voters. So these new voters, they don't have a history of voting for any political party. So the party identification factor, normally voters, they identify themselves with a certain political party, which is quite prominent in the Melaka state election. You can see that the BN in particular retain their voters, with a slight reduction in number of votes that they garnered compared to the 2018 general election. But in a way that those people who voted for Barisan Nasional will continue to vote for Barisan Nasional in the Melaka state election. But with the what do you call this? The inclusion of more than, almost 6 million new voters in the upcoming general election, the situation will be different. The analysis will be quite different. There will be new dynamics that I'm sure that each political parties or coalition will try to win the hearts of these new voters, including the young voters, the 18 years old. I think like you, whether you register to vote or not, it is automatic registration. Right? So you will be eligible to vote in the next general election. And you don't have a history of voting for any political party. So you will make your own wise decision which party to vote. So the situation will be very fluid, very dynamic. That we can't say for sure whether the trend in the Melaka state election will continue in the next general election. Right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marzuki. I believe
Yeah.
that, in the upcoming general election, people who are eligible to vote should, keep their options open, as there will be more coalitions and there will be more insights that they will have to review in order to decide which party they're going to vote.
So, Mr. Tan, this one is for you. The public has urged the government for the anti-hopping law to be implemented. Is it truly effective in navigating the Malaysian politics landscape towards a better Malaysian politics?
Malaysian public went through all this political change or political drama in the last 1.5 years. So a lot of people are very, very fatigued, are not happy with what's happening. So that's why more and more people are asking for this anti-hopping law. But on the surface, it's good intention. But again, we will need to deal with the constitutions because constitution granted that people, you can freedom of association. Today I support party A. Tomorrow, if let's say I'm no MP, today I support party A, but I have disagreed with the party leader, and can I quit and join the other group or become independent? So this the freedom of association that's under the constitution. But how we will design the question, it will be go back to some of the constitution expert or political science experts to discuss how we can have a system to minimize the impacts from this party hopping or change political allegiance, because we need to respect first the freedom of association, but secondly we also need to respect the voter make a choice to choose someone to be the MP. But beside the personal factor, the party factor is still very important. So I think we need to deal with the system, a mechanism to minimize the impact rather than totally ban the party hopping. Some of the NGO civil society people suggest recall election. If let's say someone quit from his party, join the other one, then you can start a recall election so that he or she can have to face the voters again, whether they want to kick him out or whether there will be a by-elections if that's because of this. So there are a lot more other mechanisms that we can discuss and explore, brainstorming to how to reduce the impact from this party hopping. So this kind of dilemma faced by Malaysian. We went through so much in the last 2 years. We want a stable government so that economic government will functions. But at the same time, we also need to respect the freedom of association and all these things. And if we have too rigid, then will be also limits the so-called the political space within the party, whether it's within the ruling party or within the opposition's parties, because disagreement always happen. But if let's say all these disagreements happen with the good intention, probably we will have to allow it to happen, or we can't totally ban if. So I think public, yes, fed up, but what is the best mechanism for Malaysia? I think we still need a lot more discussion on that. Thank you.
So, considering the fact that Malaysia has been going through quite a lot during this pandemic, there are so many things that can contribute to making the Malaysian politics become stable again and not just an anti-hopping law. But considering, based on the situation at that time and at that moment, there will be things going to be done by the government.
So as Mr. Tan has mentioned before, the current COVID situation in Melaka is looking pretty stable right now. But Dr. Marzuki, I have a question for you. So during the Sabah state election, it has triggered a bomb, and as a result, the number of COVID-19 cases has increased drastically. So with the Melaka state election that has took place, how do you think we can learn from the past in order to curb the transmission of COVID-19 in the upcoming general election?
Sabah state election, that there was SOP and quite strict SOP, but the compliance to SOP is a bit problematic, particularly when it comes to holding rallies, ceramahs. You can't really control the crowd, you know. Other than that, the meetings, for example, meetings of political parties, because of course, when it comes to election, political parties have to meet, they have to discuss somehow, to strategize. So we cannot avoid from having meetings, but there must be some adherence or compliance to the SOPs, wearing face mask, avoid crowded places, always sanitize or wash your hands. This is a simple, I think, that has become the norms. Not only is no longer new norms, it becomes the norms in our daily life, particularly in dealing with this pandemic. And secondly, don't forget that during the Sabah state election, vaccines were not there yet. No vaccines. So we can see the spike cases after the state election. But whereas in Melaka election, even now, almost 100% of our adult population has been vaccinated, fully vaccinated. And more than, I think, 70% of the total population has been vaccinated. Even some has gone for the booster dose. And so in terms of vaccine, we are quite ahead. So therefore, for the Melaka state election, we can do so. I mean, the election can be held quite, in a safe manner, because not only the SOP become very strict, but the fact that most of our population has been fully vaccinated. So there's a difference. So if the election, the GE15 to be held, I don't know. People say maybe next year. I don't know because this is up to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will have the power under the Constitution to advise the Yang Pertuan Agong on the date to dissolve the Parliament to allow for the GE15 to be held. So it is up to the Prime Minister. But let's say that election to be held next year. So we hope that the COVID-19 situation will improve. More and more people will get vaccinated, even will get their booster dose. So when we have the election, then the situation is quite safe for the people to come out and vote. So that is our hope. But if I can add a little bit more, if I can add a little bit more, I think Seng also mentioned just now about the SOP. I think the SOP must be reviewed too. I found that in the Melaka state election, the SOP was very, very, very strict. Yes, we know that we need to have that kind of SOP to make sure that there'll be no spike in COVID-19 cases, but at the same time, I think we don't need to curtail the democratic rights of the candidates, to reach out to voters, because it is important for the voters to know the campaign issues, to be educated, and when they make decision, they make informed decision. So campaign must be fair. There must be some room for all candidates from across political parties to reach out to the voters in a very safe manner. So I think probably in the future, learning from the Melaka election, learning from, I know we have a Sarawak state election, so I hope that the SOPs can be reviewed and improved upon.
As we wait for the SOPs to be reviewed, and even though most of the population has already been vaccinated, it is important that we still follow the SOP and ensure that we can prevent from the transmission from increasing in Malaysia for a safer progress or process of the upcoming general election.
So, Mr. Tan, I have a very interesting question for you. As I mentioned before about the anti-hopping law, what is your opinion on this? Do you think we should implement this anti-hopping law in order to stop representatives from changing their political parties? What do you think?
Well, I personally think that okay, there's a one version in the table in the Penang State Assembly. Once you quit from your party, there will be straight away by elections. But then we know that someone bring it to the court for violation of the constitution rights. But I personally think that we need a more mature or more stable political system or culture in terms of dealing with the disagreements on policy, on the leaders, and all these things, so that we will have a stable government or coalition in the near future. If not, we will always come back to this cycle in what happened in the last 2 years, where people we, we keep changing government or the leaders, and it's not very helpful for our also our daily life, because all the investors asking us that who asking whether the stability of the government of the day, so that they will want to decide whether they want to invest or not. So I will hope there's some mechanism to resolve this party hopping. But is it total, like you quit your party, then straight away we disqualify you as MP, then call by election? I think this not. I think probably this is not the case. But I think all the people want is the stability. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. So, as we know that implementing the law itself may or may not help in giving us a better government. So, more suggestions and more discussions should be made in order to help Malaysia reach a stable government state.
Dr. Marzuki, we have another question for you. So, as we know, based on the Melaka state election, there has been many more youth representations as candidates. So, for the next Malaysian 15 general election, can we see the same trend ongoing? And what are the elements that should be manifested by these youth candidates?
Mm. Oh yeah, I think this will be the trend in the future, particularly when the Undi 18 is implemented, where more and more young voters will be eligible to vote. So I think this will encourage political parties to fill the younger candidates to be the representative of the people, especially the voice of the young people, to be in the government, something that the youth or the young people appreciate very much. So if the political parties want to be relevant in the future, then of course they have to give more rooms for the young people to participate. Participate not only in the political process of voting, but also to be candidates in election. And who knows, probably you, Aisha, and Alia are also eligible to contest in the next election if you want, if you're interested. So maybe you can, is it? So this is a trend for the future, and I think this is something which is very positive for our country.
So as we can see, Undi 18 has led to more exposure on more youth, more exposure on politics for the youth, and it has encouraged many more youth to step up and contribute more to our political world in Malaysia.
Yes, I totally agree with what you said. Yeah. Mhm. We need more young people, fresh ideas, to be in the forefront of our country's politics and government. And I think we have quite a few now who have proven themselves to be quite successful in politics and in government. Some have become ministers and at a very young age, deputy ministers, and they come with a very fresh ideas, introducing new what do you call this perspective into government, politics, and society. So I think this is something that we should cherish, and I hope that it will be a trendsetter in the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Marzuki and Mr. Tan,
Yeah.
for giving us your time and patiently answering all our questions. What we got from today's discussion was looking at our situation, especially with everything going on and everybody getting used to their daily lives again. It is something new for us to be starting fresh with this election. But we are hoping to see more improvements in Malaysia's government, especially with more new faces as representatives, not just from the adults, but from the youth as well. No harm done in improvements and everything. So thank you very much to our guests, Dr. Marzuki and Mr. Tan. It's been such an honor having you guys here with us tonight. Alia, would you like to say anything?
So we have definitely gained a lot, especially me and Aisha here, from today's episode, and we hope that the viewers also gained as much as we did, and hopefully more. So if you're keen to know more about politics, don't forget to tune in for Political Insights on Sundays now at 9 p.m. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow IIUM TV on various platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, and our latest account on LinkedIn.
All right. Again, a very special thanks to Dr. Marzuki and Mr. Tan. Thank you also to all of our viewers for tuning in with us tonight. We will see you next time on our next episode. This was Political Insights, 40 minutes of political knowledge.
Okay. Thank you and welcome.